This is actually what makes me a bit frustrated about the modern political scene, is it's not real enough for me. There isn't enough gritty reality about what's actually going on, what's happening to the people that you are caring for, who are 100, and what an age.
Yeah.
And his mother's 99.
What an age, you know? And I don't want that not to be the case. But with it, it means that person's been retired for at least 35 years, receiving a state. Now, when they introduced the state pension in this country, at 65, the average life expectancy in this country was 68. The state entered into an agreement with the nation that it was going to underwrite 3 years of retirement. And you've just described someone who's had 35. 35 years of receiving a state pension.
Well, we're 20.
Yeah. So in total, 55 years, sir. I'm not retiring. Is that fair? Can I say that to a 43-year-old person? You know, I can't. But the same 43-year-old person who can't afford to buy a terraced cottage, let alone a family house as you would probably describe a family house. It's really difficult, all of this. And I've come to it relatively in the 3.5, 4 years ago, become an MP, so I can put my hands up and say not responsible, but I come in and I think recognise that my political career, depending on how long people vote for me around here, is going to straddle a transformative period in British social life, because we've actually got no choice.
So where do you think possibly the money could come from to provide for people in the future?
I think what people spend their money on is going to change. So consumption patterns are going to change. I think I look around, I speak to my grandfather who is 90 and he gets quite upset actually when people talk about poverty. It's really interesting. And he was born 1924. The loo was a pit at the bottom of the garden, and he used to have to go get leaves from the wood to put on top of the excrement. Aged 4, that was his job when he was 4. There was one standing pipe tap to 6 cottages. He was one of 9 children. Sort of bread and dripping most days of the week type sort of diet. I think it's what I would describe as poverty. And I don't want to ever see that type of poverty again in this country. But it is only in the 1930s. It's not that long ago, really. It's about 80 years ago that I'm talking about, 85 years ago. And yet today, people's concept of what is poor seems very far removed from that. And I used to see patients in Slough, in a really tough part of Slough, come in to see me, and they had mobile phones. Things which, not that long ago, hadn't been invented, and yet they were being described to me as social class 5. And I think this whole area is where the challenges lie, is that people have become used to a particular type of lifestyle. And the only way that you can respond to what are fundamental challenges that are being brought about by ageing, and also some pretty poor financial management which has led to debts, both personal and state, is by actually working harder, for longer, for less. And that is not a great line for a politician to deliver, because it's but it means you're going to be working hard to provide things that at the moment the state provides. And then I suppose the more positive side of it is a solution, is this nation has to become a world best trading nation. Our competitors are gearing up, and we really need to gear up and take them on. This country has wonderful intellectual capital. We have fantastic ideas that we rarely take to commercial stage. We invariably just sell them and other people make the money out of them. We can be a great, strong nation again. But we have to decide, first of all, to be honest about where we are, and then decide where we want to be, and then chart the course. And it will take at least a decade. And it will be a decade. It's rather like sort of post-war Germany, model. Anybody who wants to look at it, where Germany was in 1945 to where Germany was in 1960, utterly transformed. And who's the strongest nation now economically, socio-economically in Europe, mainland Europe? It's Germany. And I think Germany is no better than Britain. I think Britain's great, and I think we can do it, but we've just got to decide to do it and then suck up the difficulty along the way, because it will be a tough path. I must ask somebody else. Do you want to just come back with a comment? Yeah.
Yes. Understand what you say, that we've all got to work harder. Yes, but that's got to start at the top.
Yeah.
Where people are working harder, creating benefit for their company,
Yeah.
and not just taking
Absolutely.
huge salaries.
Totally agree.
Huge
Sure. And I think, I mean, there is I'm somewhat limited in this type of environment. I could put forward like sort of a broader pitch, but yes, you're right. The pay of top executives, of bankers, and everything else is totally out of kilter with actually what value they bring.
Absolutely.
All right. The reason I was against the bank bailouts in 2008 was not because I didn't realise that if you didn't do it, that certain banks would go under and deposits would not be on and everything else. It was because of the moral hazard. We were rewarding fraudulent behaviour. We were rewarding people who had really just taken the mick, and they've gone away, they've come back, and they're now riding that wave again. And I am as against that as I am against people who perhaps take it a bit easier in life and expect to be given a job, or people who expect to not be given a job and just sit at home, the sort of benefit street sort of scandal thing that we've all seen on our TV screen. I'm against both, because both of them are abusing the majority of people who want to put in a decent day's work and get paid accordingly, and want to be paid for the risk they take, because most of life is risk and reward, isn't it? It's, it's taking the risk, carrying the burden of running a business. These are the people, these are the heartbeat, these are the people I want to support. I don't want to support people who make, money, and I think, well, where's this money come from? It's just figures on a screen, just screwing across, and they're just creaming off a little percentage, and it isn't the type of economy I want us to be strong at. I want to be strong in building stuff, tangible stuff. That's why I'm the Parliamentary Space Committee, because there's space technology, we have an industry that's growing 10% year on year, the space industry. And there are some really interesting companies coming through in Britain, designs of new engines and these things, which we can sell abroad. Anyway,
it wasn't just the bankers. It was.
Yeah.
It was
But I know what you
mean.
There is a
Dr. Lee, you mentioned there about bankers' bonuses.
Yeah.
The government's an 80% shareholder of RBS.
Yeah.
Actually, why didn't the government take a stance there and say, we are not going to be rewarding people in a failed organisation?
Because the problem is, one, I wouldn't have taken 80% share. Okay, so I've been upfront about that all along. But we are where we are. Because of the hazard of this you could look ahead and think the state is now in the banking industry, this is going to end in tears. And because people are very upset by this phenomenon of people being given 7-figure sums as bonuses, it's like, well, what's a salary? Why can't they just do a good job?
Yeah.
Particularly people who are essentially public sector employees. You think, though I might say bonuses all over the public sector now, which is also something I find rather odd. But the difficulty that RBS has is that it wants really good people to come in and make that bank profitable. And you, as a taxpayer, everyone in this room, via the state, owns a share in this bank. So you want this bank to be successful so that we can sell it back to private investors, and then we can use some of that money, hopefully, to pay down the debt that we've got. So we're trapped, which is why I wouldn't have done it. We're trapped in this situation where we want to get them to incentivise people to make them money, so that we can then get it off our bills. And so you're caught in between. And so I don't think it would be right for the government to get in to stop them incentivising people to make money for a bank that we want to sell off the state's books. I mean, the thing is, it's a mess.
You can't argue it both ways. You can't say, on one way, we want to go and sell it as an
I want to
organisation
get
and
value.
make money, but then also say that that sector doesn't make money for the economy.
Well, yes, I can, because I didn't agree with the bank bailout. Okay, I think that sector if that sector is reliant upon bailouts because it is different, it's systemic. I've heard all of this baloney from people in the city, in the patronising terms, where you don't really understand. The system would have collapsed. Well, in which case, they have to be regulated differently. They're not like the other business. Anybody's a businessman in here or businesswoman in here. If your business goes, it goes, doesn't it? You don't get a bank bailout to stop your business going bust. So in which case, if they are different, I think you're right. They should be regulated differently, which would be my argument. Personally, I think banks buy something for X and sell it for X plus one. Banks are no different than fruit and veg salesmen.
Precisely.
Okay? So I think banks shouldn't be regulated any different than any other business, because they're businesses, let them fail. And every time, but to go along that line, if you put money into a bank as a deposit, it's an investment in that bank. So why should we cover the deposits? Because again, I go back to the intergenerational inequity thing. A large proportion of those deposits were held by people who were retired, who downsized at the top of the property market. And you were expecting young people, who are the main body of taxpayers, to underwrite those deposit accounts. And I just think we get ourselves into morally questionable situations.
But what would have been the consequences if people had gone to cash machines and nothing came out because that part of the organisation failed?
It would have been not good for them, but as I keep saying, if you invest in a bank and the bank doesn't work, a bank pays interest on a deposit account on the basis of what they do with the money that gets deposited. They further invest it elsewhere. So they can offer 1 or 2% to the deposit holder, who then gets that 1 or 2%. But they've got to make that money by investing that money elsewhere. And the risk of investing it elsewhere is borne by the bank. And the riskier banks, Northern Rock being a classic example, were offering higher rates of deposits accounts, but also the best mortgage accounts. How do you square that? And they were doing it by taking riskier ventures. So why did we bail out Northern Rock? Why? It doesn't make sense to me, but we did. But I hear what you say. It is perverse that a state-owned bank is sanctioning millions of pounds of bonuses on one level, but on another level, you want that bank to be successful so that we can sell it. And that's the moral hazard, which is why I wasn't in favour of it.
Thank you. Philip, there has been, quite rightly, a national outcry about the secret family courts and how children have been taken away from their parents, often seemingly without justifiable cause, with the suspicion that social services, particularly in Essex, I think, are trying to keep to their adoption statistics and records. It's now come to light now that there's a previous government introduced another complicated set of rules where there's a secret court for older people, in particular dementia, but other diseases as well, where despite the families want to look after them, they're being sectioned and taken away from the families. What are you going to do about both of those? I know something's been happening about the children's ones, but I think equally that's serious.
The role of the state in taking a child into custody, placing them with another family, and the role of the state in sectioning people, they've always been sensitive areas, Isabel. Certainly when people are sectioned, the way in which the Mental Health Act works, I'm comfortable with decisions that are made in circumstances around that, because it can sometimes go contrary to what the family wants, but it is in the best interest of the patient and of wider society. And it's difficult.
Sometimes.
Yes. And I'm not going to, I don't know what specific cases you're referring to that have been in the media, because I've not seen this. But specifically around mental health, my experience in my interactions with mental health teams, nothing like that is ever done lightly. and often there are issues that are not necessarily public about the family concerned. And with regards to children, I've dealt with a case locally that is, I can't talk about obviously, but it can be very difficult with children, and children being taken away, and suspicions of abuse, accusations of abuse. But again, councils up and down the country have a responsibility to protect the child. This particular case I'm pursuing a bit because I'm not 100% sure about the way in which it was managed. But again, the law is written. These situations, these secret courts are created with the best intentions in my experience. And I, look, write to me about the individual case. You're looking, write to me about it. I'm being cautious around this, particularly around the mental health thing, because I know that there are circumstances in which people are sectioned against the will of the family.
Yeah.
And that happens. But
I'm fully aware of lots of illnesses, etc., as you know, on the but where there is any suspicion behind closed doors, where they're not allowed to talk about it, etc.
there may be reasons for that.
May be the reasons, but the fact that it's happened,
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with,
Sure.
and I'm sure a lot of people are.
Yeah, I'm not.
And things do go
Yeah.
wrong.
Do you think the mere fact that it's behind closed doors, there is no way of challenging it, is actually cause for considerable concern. But if something has gone wrong, and there appears to be cases where children have been taken into care where
Yeah.
they certainly have gone wrong, there is no way back. There is no way that the cases can be exposed, and there's no way that...
If you want to write, can you write to me about this, because I'm happy to pursue it. I think.
I can't give you a case locally, I can give you only the case that I've seen in the press, but I am concerned that if you have a set of people who can actually make a decision which is irreversible, it cannot be questioned even by the Supreme Court of the UK.
Okay.
There's something seriously wrong.
If what you're saying is true, I would have sympathy with that position. I don't want to question what you're saying is true, but I didn't read the story. Okay, so I haven't seen
I'll try and get the stories out for you.
So if you could send it to me, I'd be interested to read it. I'm looking for someone else, sir.
I've got to read it because I'm not very good at this
Yeah,
sort of thing. It's talking about child benefit. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know whether
Yeah.
it seems rather trivial, but we have two grown-up children,
Yeah.
with 3 children each,
Yeah.
and it's quite hard for them.
Yeah.
Currently, child benefit is negated if either parent is earning more than 50,000. This is unfair because in a family where only one of the parents is working,
Yeah.
but income is, say, 60,000, child benefit is lost completely.
Yeah.
Whilst in a family where both parents are working, total income can be as much as 99,000,
Yeah.
yet child benefit is retained since neither parent individually earns in excess of 50,000. I mean, in the south of England, these salaries are a reality. So earning above 50,000 but below 60,000, the percentage of child allowance is
taken.
lost,
Yeah.
but over 60,000, all of the child benefit is lost. And the government must know that this is totally unfair. What's going to happen about it?
Okay,
Absolutely nothing.
The original announcement was at a conference. It was October 2010, I think, and it was actually 42,000 at that point, and it was boom, anything over 42. Within seconds of that announcement, I was getting text from family and friends, let alone political friends, just aghast at the decision. So was I. I didn't know it was coming. I argued vociferously against it, as did many, which is why they then tried to mitigate it a bit by making it 50, tapered down to 60, as you've just described. It's one of those situations where, this is a personal view, I'm now going to step away from the government. I'm fundamentally against it. as a policy. My own view is that I don't think the state should incentivise people to procreate. I think the age of universal benefits is going to pass soon, can't afford them. I would rather that your son and daughter
Well, son and daughter, both of them.
actually had lower tax on their earnings and then chose to have children. I would rather people were given the money and made a decision, okay, we're going to spend our money on having children. I think a staging post towards scrapping child benefit, which is what I've just described, would be to go back to how it was with child benefit, where your first child you didn't receive it, and your second child you did, third child you did. I think it was limited to 3 or 4 children. I'm looking around, anybody might know more than me, but it was the first child you didn't receive. And I think it is, I personally would have either left it alone, or I would have said, no, we're now going to move away from child benefit, and we're going to start lowering tax on work. And we're going to say to people, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, life is about taking personal responsibility for your actions and decisions.
I'm talking about the fairness of it, though.
And this is the problem. What has been done is it is viewed nationally that the rich can carry the burden and the poorer people can receive the child benefit.
Yes, but your next door neighbour could be earning much more money.
And I agree with you, madam, which is why I didn't think it was a good idea. Okay, I continue to say that it's not a good idea. I made a speech at the Institute of Economic Affairs the other day saying I'd get rid of it and just reduce people's tax burden so that your children got to take home more tax and more income after tax so that they could then spend that on their children. That's what I would do. Unfortunately, that's not the decision that was made. I think it was one of those situations where coalition government